Ladies and gentlemen, let's go back and review because these are some things I'm going to be asking you. These are some things I'm going to be asking of you in a little bit on your test. So the first thing we want to make sure is this says completing the square. Now we need to kind of remember, some of you I know kind of forgot as far as why are we completing the square, what exactly is the process of completing the square. So I'll try to make this as streamlined as possible for you. Now if we're looking into solving this equation, the first thing you would obviously want to do is make sure that our equation is set equal to 0. So if we have variables on both sides or anything else, solve so your variable is on the same side, and you set your equation equal to 0. Or if you have a y or an fx, just replace the y or fx with 0. OK. Now, what we previously did in our last homework quiz is we talked about factoring this. So therefore, this would be 13, and this would be positive 8. Now, exactly what we're trying to think about factoring. What two numbers multiply to give you 13, add to give you 8? And is there any possible numbers that multiply to give you 13 but add to give you 8? No. No. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is not factorable. Right? So that's why we're using completing the square. It's important for you guys to understand it's not you cannot factor it. So we have to come up with another method, which is completing the square. And what completing the square does is it provides us with an equation that we can factor. So how do we get that equation we can factor? Well, the first thing is we're going to isolate our first two terms, our x squared and our 8x. Now, when we're completing the square, we got to make sure that our a is equal to 1, which in this case it is. Now we move on to creating something we can factor. So to do that, we do the b divided by 2 squared. If you guys remember that, b divided by 2 squared. So we go to our equation. We say, what was our b? 8 divided by 2 squared. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 4 squared is 16. So 16 is going to be the number that what we call completes the square. It's going to produce our perfect square trinomial. So now what we do is we're going to add the 16 inside this parenthesis. But whatever we add on the right side, we have to add on the left side. So I'm going to add a 16 on the left side equals x squared plus 8x plus 16 plus 13. So now what I want you guys to see, do you guys see now, since I added this 16, I now have a trinomial inside this parenthesis that can be factored. Can it be factored? Well, let me show you. 16 and 8. What two numbers multiply to give 16 and add to give 8? It's 4 and 4, right? So I could say 16 equals x plus 4 times x plus 4 plus 13. But really, guys, we don't write x plus 4 times x plus 4. We can just write 16 equals x plus 4 squared. OK? Now, why is it important to write? Why is it important to do this? Because if you guys remember, what we did in the first part of this chapter is we used the square root method. Correct, Ashley? We used the square root method. And you can only use the square root method when you have 1x. Well, guess what, guys? By completing the square, I now only have 1x. So I can solve using the square root method. So now all I need to use is subtract 13 on both sides. So I have 3 equals x plus 4 squared. Now I undo the square root. So I have plus or minus the square root of 3 equals x plus 4. Now to solve for x, I subtract 4 on both sides. And my final answer is x equals a negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 3. Huh? Yeah, 16 minus 3. Anybody have any questions on that?
Yeah, I did like all
yes.
of that.